The screen is dark, and a heavy heartbeat echoes. Suddenly, flashes from courtroom cameras pierce the black, mixed with the distant roar of protesters. A voice, urgent yet calm, cuts in. Bill Cosby's collapse wasn't just the result of a sentence. It was the spark that could bring down all of Hollywood. In slow motion, we see him crumble to the floor, gasps filling the room, someone whispering, "Is he gone?" Just seconds before the verdict. Prosecutors had dropped a quiet but devastating hint: there exists a sealed list, holding names so powerful that, if revealed, they could destroy careers, tear apart families, and shatter an entire industry. Brief flashes of blurred documents, blacked-out names, and the ghostly pulse of an audio waveform flicker on screen. The voice returns, sharper now. The collapse was just the beginning. Are you ready for the truth? The truth they never wanted you to hear? They say a single moment can break a man. But for Bill Cosby, this was far more than that. It was the burial of every illusion of control he had ever held. The courtroom felt suffocating, the air thick enough to strangle, while cameras clicked in cold succession and breaths trembled in anticipation. Then the judge's voice cut through like steel. Life in prison, no parole. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to halt, even the air hesitating. Cosby tried to mask his reaction, but his own body betrayed him, lips quivering, chest tightening, the blood draining from his face until, as though the crushing weight of his sins finally descended all at once, he collapsed. The thud echoed, like a verdict of its own, drawing gasps as lawyers and security rushed forward. Some whispered, "Is he gone?" while others stared in stunned disbelief. Outside, word spread, igniting a clash of emotions: tears from those who saw justice at last, murmurs from others warning this was only the beginning of the end. But the true shock came from within the prosecution's ranks. His collapse, they hinted, wasn't just from the sentence. Moments earlier, sealed files had been mentioned, files rumored to name other Hollywood titans and containing a secret recording of Cosby confessing to truths powerful enough to shatter entire careers. Families, names, and reputations were poised to crumble forever. Across the aisle, Pamela Warner, the mother of Malcolm Jamal Warner, sat motionless, silent tears carving down her cheeks as she whispered, almost to herself, "This is just the beginning." Outside, the digital world erupted. Hashtag sex loaded, hashtag Cosby claps, hashtag truths, hashtag Hollywood secrets. Millions replayed the footage, hearts thudding, each viewer sensing that the verdict was merely the first fracture before a much greater quake. That morning had begun like any other in the crowded downtown courthouse, yet it ended as one of the most devastating and unforgettable spectacles in modern legal history. Reporters had claimed their places before sunrise, lenses fixed on the heavy oak doors as if expecting a ghost to walk through. Beyond those doors, protesters flooded the streets, their signs screaming justice, truth, and never again. Some had waited years for this reckoning. Others came only to witness history splinter apart. Inside, the air crackled like static, sharp, restless, almost dangerous. Every seat in the gallery was taken, the atmosphere saturated with the scent of aged wood, bitter coffee, and the unmistakable musk of human anxiety. Bill Cosby sat at the defense table, his suit immaculate, his hands neatly folded, but his eyes betrayed him, reflecting a man clinging desperately to the fraying strands of denial, sensing with chilling certainty that the rope holding him was about to snap. When the judge entered, the room's energy shifted in an instant, like a storm front rolling in. Conversations cut off mid-breath, even the rustle of papers went still. The only sound was the slow, deliberate thud of the judge's footsteps, each one striking like a countdown to something that could never be undone. And then it came: life in prison, no chance of parole. The words didn't simply echo. They detonated, sending a shockwave through the room. A collective gasp rolled through the courtroom. One juror's hand flew to their mouth. A reporter's pen slipped and clattered faintly to the floor, and from the back came a breathless, "Oh my God." Cosby's head twitched as if the sentence itself had physically struck him. His lips moved but no sound escaped, his eyes blinking fast, the glassy sheen of disbelief overtaking them. His shoulders trembled, and the lawyer at his side leaned in, whispering something urgent, but it was too late. The dam had burst. His skin drained to the pale stillness of marble, breaths turning shallow and erratic. One hand grasped blindly for the table, the other clutched at his chest. Then, with a slow, irreversible surrender, his body collapsed. The thud as he hit the floor was dull, heavy, and final, making even seasoned court officers flinch. Chaos. Exploded shouts, scrambling footsteps, And the urgent cry call 911. Someone yelled out, though the medics were already pushing through the chaos. Lawyers, security, and court staff converged in a frantic knot around him. A burst of camera light froze the moment forever. America's once beloved TV father sprawled, unconscious on the courtroom floor, suit rumpled, mouth slightly ajar. That single image would saturate every newsfeed within the hour. Outside, the crowd sensed the shift before any official word. A ripple of shouts spread down the steps, cutting through the chants of protesters. From the front row, a man bellowed, "He's down." The street's noise fractured instantly, half erupting in cheers, declaring it justice at last. The other half falling into uneasy murmurs, as though witnessing not just a public downfall, but the stripping away of the last fragile shred of an old man's dignity. What the public didn't yet realize, and what would soon transform this day from a courtroom spectacle into a cultural earthquake, was that Cosby's collapse wasn't caused by the sentence alone. Minutes before the verdict, prosecutors had dropped a quiet but devastating hint: a cache of sealed files existed. And according to those who'd seen them, the contents went far beyond anything the world had imagined. They contained not only more victim testimonies, but names recognizable, powerful Hollywood names, and, most incendiary of all, a secret audio recording allegedly capturing Cosby speaking with chilling candor about truths so toxic they could obliterate careers, dismantle families, and forever alter the public's perception of Hollywood's underbelly. The timing was deliberate. Prosecutors had let those whispers slip just before sentencing, and some believed it was the realization that those files could one day be unleashed that finally cracked Cosby's composure. In the gallery, Pamela Warner, the mother of Malcolm Jamal Warner, once a child star on Cosby's wholesome, all-American sitcoms that paralyzed. Her gaze fixed on the man who had helped build that illusion of a perfect family, now unmasked. In the harshest possible light, that illusion now lay crumpled on the courtroom floor. Pamela Warner's tears were not gentle, they burned with years of unspoken fury. Leaning forward slightly, her voice came low, almost a whisper, yet sharp enough to cut through the chaos in her mind. "This is the beginning, not the end." Outside, newsrooms scrambled to blast breaking alerts. Hashtag Cosby collapse. Hashtag truth runs faster. Hashtag Hollywood secrets surged through social media as slowed-down clips of his fall looped endlessly, replayed and dissected by millions. Some viewers watched with clenched jaws and twisted stomachs, born of pity. Others with the cold satisfaction of justice long delayed. But beneath the headlines and hashtags, the real story remains sealed away, biding its time. The verdict had taken Cosby's freedom, but it had also flung open the door to a far greater storm. The courthouse corridors had never felt so airless. Paramedics rolled Bill Cosby out on a stretcher, his head slumped to the side beneath an oxygen mask that hid most of his face. Outside, the press unleashed a barrage of flashbulbs that burst like relentless fireworks, each one freezing a different angle of his downfall. Reporters shouted over the chaos, "Mr. Cosby, do you have anything to say?" But he offered nothing. Whether from unconsciousness or deliberate silence, no one could tell. Back in the courtroom, the air still crackled with the residue of shock. Jurors sat rooted to their chairs, staring at the vacant defense table, while the lead prosecutor fumbled with papers, her hands trembling as though she already understood this was no longer just a legal win, it was the spark of something far larger. Whispers mutated into roars with alarming speed. By the time Cosby's stretcher reached the waiting ambulance, social media had already ignited. One tweet from a self-proclaimed court insider lit the fuse. Breaking: collapse, not just. From verdict, prosecution hinted at sealed files linking other major Hollywood names to same crimes. Audio confession exists. Developing. Within minutes, it had been shared over 50,000 times. Major newsrooms scrambled to confirm, but the justice, depending on perspective, was already irreversible. Television screens across the country were locked in wall-to-wall coverage. Looping the moment Bill Cosby crumpled to the floor, each network layering on its own slow-motion replay and brooding soundtrack. What had begun as a medical emergency had now evolved into a symbol. Some painted it as the instant a predator's mask finally shattered. Others as the spark that would unravel Hollywood's most guarded secrets. Behind closed doors, however, the atmosphere was far more ominous. Sources within the district attorney's office hinted that the sealed evidence contained transcripts of a private conversation recorded years earlier, one in which Cosby, laughing, described incidents the public had never heard about. Worse still, he named names: actors, producers, and media executives. Some still standing at the very peak of their careers, many celebrated for their supposed moral integrity. The suggestion alone sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. Publicists scrambled to crisis managers, and celebrity lawyers quietly reached out to learn if their clients were implicated. It was a scramble not witnessed since the height of the #MeToo revelations. Only this time, whispers warned it would be far more devastating. Outside, the courthouse had become a storm of voices. Cosby's supporters shouted about witch hunts, colliding with survivors' rights activists who called his collapse poetic justice. The chants swelled in volume and fury until police were forced to erect barricades to hold back the chaos. Pamela Warner stayed behind, unmoved by the media storm gathering outside. Alone in the front row, her hands knotted together, she stared at the empty defense table. For her, this moment wasn't about hashtags or breaking news banners, it was painfully, deeply personal. Her son, Malcolm Jamal Warner, had spent his childhood in Cosby's orbit, unknowingly part of a meticulously constructed illusion. Now, watching that illusion crumble before her eyes was equal parts vindication and heartbreak. When a reporter finally caught her in the hallway, she offered no lengthy statement, only a steady gaze into the camera and 6 words. The truth always finds its way out. Always. Within hours, that clip was everywhere, looped on newscasts, reposted across social feeds, hailed by many as the first visible crack in Hollywood's towering wall of silence. But then came the leak. Late that night, a grainy audio file surfaced online. The voice, unmistakably Cosby's, was calm, almost conversational. The words, however, were anything but. The words in the leaked clip were chilling. Cosby spoke of keeping certain people silent and hinted at a list of others who, in his own words, wouldn't survive if the truth ever emerged. It lasted barely 30 seconds, but that was enough to ignite the internet. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Bill Cosby, it was about the list. Who was on it? How far did it reach? Entertainment blogs went into overdrive, teasing hints without naming names. Online sleuths claimed they recognized voices murmuring in the background, while skeptics dismissed it as an elaborate The DA's office, refusing to confirm or deny its authenticity, only poured gasoline on the speculation. Hollywood slipped into quiet chaos. PR teams pushed out carefully worded no-comment statements. A handful of A-listers abruptly announced social media breaks. One major studio quietly shelved a film starring an actor whispered to be connected. The public didn't need confirmation, they could smell fear. And through it all, the image of Cosby collapsing replayed endlessly. No longer as a sign of personal weakness, but as the possible flashpoint for an industry-wide reckoning. By morning, the hashtags had mutated. Hashtag who is on the list joined hashtag Cosby collapse, and hashtag Hollywood secrets at the top of trending charts. Live streams popped up like wildfire, featuring panels dissecting every second of courtroom footage, every syllable of the leaked audio. Yet behind the noise, the DAs inside the DA's office, the mood was surgical. Warrants were being drafted, subpoenas prepared. And while the sealed files remained locked away for no sources, whispered that a court petition could force them open if public demand grew loud enough. And public demand had never been louder. For survivors who had waited decades, it was a bittersweet victory. Cosby had fallen, but the idea that more predators still roamed free kept their wounds raw. For Pamela Warner, the battle had only shifted. She slipped quietly into the back of a waiting car, her phone buzzing with messages from Hollywood parents suddenly questioning what their children might have endured. In the rear view, the courthouse loomed, a beacon of flashing lights, cameras, and chaos. It was no longer just a building. It was ground zero. If the whispers were true, Cosby's collapse was merely the first domino. By the third day, the spotlight had widened. This was no longer just about him. Hollywood itself was beginning to unravel. A heavily redacted document appeared on the dark web, claimed to be from the sealed files. Even blurred names were enough for online sleuths to connect the dots. Initials and vague descriptions began pointing toward A-list actors, beloved talk show hosts, and even a sitting studio executive. Then came the second leak, longer, clearer, more damning. Cosby's voice, deliberate and almost smug, spoke of decades of protection, of friends in powerful places who kept their hands clean while he got dirty, of strings pulled in the press, of victims pressured into silence. He even laughed while recalling how icily certain stories had been buried. The worst part wasn't the admissions, it was the casualness. the way he spoke about lives as if they were disposable storylines, in a script only he controlled. The reaction was instant and nuclear. Talk shows devoted entire hours to the leaks, bringing on psychologists, former insiders, and media watchdogs to dissect every word, every pause, every chilling laugh. Talk shows brought in prosecutors, psychologists, and industry insiders to pick apart every frame of footage and every syllable of the leaked audio. Social media turned into a battlefield, hashtags multiplying by the hour, hashtag Cosby files, hashtag Hollywood fallout, hashtag no one is safe, as users demanded resignations, arrests, and public apologies from anyone even loosely connected. Outside the DA's office, survivors gathered in growing numbers, candles and photographs in hand. Their silence spoke louder than any chant, a living reminder that behind every headline was a human life long ignored. Pamela Warner stood at the front, saying nothing, holding no sign, just a steady, unflinching presence lit by the flicker of candlelight. For her, this wasn't about online outrage. It was about watching cracks spread through a fortress once thought untouchable. Inside Hollywood, panic metastasized into paranoia. Studios rushed to comb through old contracts, buying out buried NDAs in quiet desperation. A major streaming service abruptly pulled several classic shows, including Cosby's own, citing licensing issues that convinced no one. Then came the arrests. In a stunning late-night raid, federal agents marched a prominent producer out of his Beverly Hills mansion in handcuffs, the footage captured by a neighbor's phone going viral within minutes. Whispers claimed his name appeared in the unredacted version of the list. By dawn, 2 more industry veterans, each with decades-long careers, had been taken into custody. It no longer felt like a news cycle, it felt like a purge. And the public's hunger for truth was only growing. People who once laughed at these celebrities' jokes were now dissecting their old interviews, searching for tells, for cracks, for guilt hiding in plain sight. Viewers who once adored these celebrities were now combing through their old interviews, award show appearances, and public speeches, searching for signs they had missed, moments that now felt loaded with hidden malice. And still, at the center of the storm, sat Bill Cosby, a fallen king, whose own collapse had triggered the unraveling of an empire. From his hospital bed, he saw no one but his lawyer. One nurse claimed to have overheard him muttering, "They think I'm the end, but I'm just the start." Whether it was a threat or a delusion, no one could be certain. Pamela Warner's quiet resolve hardened into action. Alongside other families, she joined forces with advocacy groups to demand the court unseal the files completely. Their campaign caught fire. Petitions gathered millions of signatures. Protests swelled in size, and Pamela's rally speech, "If they've protected each other for decades, then it's time we protect the truth," became a rallying cry, splashed across posters, chanted in the streets, and cut into viral TikTok clips against the haunting image of Cosby slumped on the courtroom floor. But the movement drew enemies. Anonymous threats poured into activists' inboxes, and one night, Pamela's car was vandalized. The word "stop" gouged into the paint. Instead of retreating, she grew more defiant. "They're scared," she told a reporter. "And scared people make mistakes." The mistake came quickly. An entertainment lawyer accidentally leaked an internal email chain in which studio executives discussed containing the situation and making examples of those already exposed to shield the rest. Meant to be private, the email exploded into the public sphere within hours, confirming suspicions of a coordinated cover-up. Outrage went nuclear. Lawmakers called for congressional hearings. Sponsors tore up multi-million-dollar deals. Charities cut ties with celebrities, even whispered to be on the list. The Cosby collapse had evolved into a cultural earthquake, shaking not just Hollywood but every industry connected to it. Still, the list remained sealed until another leak, this time from inside a closed-door court session. A judge's voice, grainy but clear enough, said, "Once the motion passes, everything becomes public record. We can't protect them forever." The entertainment world felt the clock start ticking. Across the country, families sat glued to their screens, waiting for the next name to fall. Each press conference felt like it could end a career in real time. The anticipation was electric, dangerous, and through it all, one truth became impossible to ignore: Bill Cosby's collapse had been the spark. But the fire was consuming far more than anyone had dared to imagine. For some, it was justice long overdue. For others, it was the death of a dream they'd been sold for decades. But for everyone, it was proof of one thing: no secret stays buried forever. Whispers of a list that could burn an entire industry to the ground now echo louder than ever. If you feel that knot in your stomach, that volatile mix of shock, sadness, and anger, you're not alone. Millions are watching this unfold in real time, knowing we've only begun to scratch the surface. Bill Cosby's sentencing wasn't the end of one man's story, it was the opening chapter of a reckoning decades in the making. Every name in those sealed files represents another victim silenced, another truth buried, another life forever altered. And now, the world faces a choice: look away and let the machine keep grinding, or demand that every secret be dragged into the light. The question is, when the moment comes, will you be one of the voices that refuses to let them bury it again?